2, here we go.
This world is not my home. I'm here but for a moment. It's all I've ever known. But this world is not my home. The fight is not my own. These burdens on my future. Empty tomb has shown I am bound for glory. I am free because I'm bound. I am bound for heaven's gate, where my feet will stand on holy ground. I am bound for glory. The saving work is done. The death is not my ending. God has overcome. I am bound for glory. I am free because I'm bound. I am bound for heaven's gate, where my feet will stand on holy ground. I am bound for glory. Bound for glory. And all my pain, all my shame, go when Jesus calls my name. Endless joy, endless praise, oh, when Jesus calls my name. All my pain, hurt and shame, go when Jesus calls my name. Endless joy, oh, endless praise, oh, when Jesus calls my name. I'm free because I'm bound. I am bound for heaven's gate, where my feet will stand on holy ground. I am bound for glory. I am free because I'm bound. I am bound for heaven's gate, where my feet will stand on holy ground. I am bound for glory. Bound for glory. Bound for glory.
Well, welcome into the harbor. My name is Pastor Chris, and I am so excited that you are joining us from wherever you're joining us from, however you're joining us. It is just a thrill that you are with us. And we're going to pick up on a conversation we started last week in episode 2 of this collection in our episode 3. And so if you missed episode 2 of last week, make sure you hit the link in down below and you can watch that later on to your convenience. But I want to pick back up with our resident theologian and Bible expert on where do we even start reading the Bible? Let's review just real quick.
Okay.
Where do we start reading the Bible?
It kind of depends on what you're after. So you pick up the Bible, there's a reason you're picking it up. Do you want to know who Jesus is? Probably that's a pretty common thing to want to know, since you probably have said yes to him, that you want him to be your Lord and your Savior, and now you want to get to know him, because how do you follow someone and you don't know who he is, right? So if you want to learn about Jesus, you can start in the Gospel of Luke, where Luke is a non-Jewish gospel writer, which is a treat for us because I don't know about you, but I'm not Jewish. And so a lot of the other ones speak in Jewish-ese, and I don't know the references. But Luke isn't Jewish. He's just like you and me and is a historian, so he loves details. I'm sorry, but I am a historian. I love details. Maps just make me really excited. And he was a doctor. So when he talks about physical thing, like healings and whatnot, you get the sense that Luke actually knows what he's talking about. So I like Luke just from that standpoint. He never really hung out with Jesus, so he kind of investigated everything he wrote down. And it's just really well told. He's an awesome storyteller, which I am a fan of stories. I learn way more from stories than I do from like a list of something. The other reason you would want to read the Bible, perhaps, maybe you have a different reason, but is if you just want to read it from beginning to end, like you would read any other book. In that case, I would start at the beginning with the book of Genesis and read. But when you hit these lists of names or these law codes, and they're boring as all get out because you don't know what in the world they're talking about, then just skip it. Seriously, and then just move on to the next story-looking thing. There's so many stories, so many more stories in the Old Testament than there are boring parts. And people give the Old Testament a hard time, but there's so much fun. And all the R-rated stuff is in the Old Testament, so you kind of gotta read it and there's plenty.
Yes, yeah, we talked a little bit on the last episode about if you were to put a rating on the Bible, it wouldn't be G. It would definitely not be G. It would be probably rated R, if not worse.
Yeah, people sleeping with each other and sleeping with your mother, and oh man, bad stuff in the Bible.
Bad stuff. There's some great stuff, but there's some stuff that happens that will just absolutely change your perspective on what you're reading. So give us a little bit of foreknowledge on how we take this book, which really is a compilation of books. When you look at it, how do we read it?
Yeah. So I look at the Bible after having studied it for, 20 years now or 30 years now. So if you have you ever seen a rom-com, like a romantic comedy movie, or read, I don't know if people read anymore, but read a romantic comedy, these romance stories, they're all the same. Right? You start and the boy and the girl meet each other, they fall in love, and they, it's bells and whistles and wonderfulness. Something happens and it separates them, right? It's got to happen or the story's boring. Well, the rest of the book or movie is really these two people pushing and pulling against each other until the very last 9 minutes of the movie. They finally get back together, ta-da, happily ever after, right? That's pretty much every romantic comedy ever written, right? The Bible does the exact same thing. So if we put God in the position of the man or the boy in this story, and the church or us in the position of the woman in the story, they meet in the Garden of Eden, something happens, they sin. You heard the story about the serpent and the apple and all that business. Separates God from his people that he loves. The rest of the Old Testament is all about God and these people pushing and pulling against each other. I want you. No, I don't want you. I hate you. I love you. The whole thing, just like the movies. You get to the New Testament when Jesus comes, that's their coming together finally. Ta-da! And then, you blow through Paul's letters because they're really kind of crazy. You get to Revelations, it's all happily ever after. It is a romantic comedy. I promise you. So when you're reading it, read it like it's that. It's the story of one family. Once you get past Genesis chapter 10, you meet this dude called Abraham. And from then on, everybody in that book is related to Abraham. Every main character is related to this guy who's the father of Judaism. And so it helps to frame the whole thing. If you look at it that way, it's the story of one family. And then also look at it like this romantic comedy thing. And if you just bring it into our 21st century ideas of what story is, it makes it so much easier to read. You're not looking for these deep truths on your first read. It's hard to find them. Just read the story of it and it'll be it'll be better.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. And I kind of like, as you were talking about this love story, in my mind, the whole time I'm thinking about this love story, I'm also thinking about all the war movies that I've watched as this love story occurs. I think about 300, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think
Awesome
about the
story.
battles that happen within the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And same kind of concept, like even in this rom-com
Yeah.
love story, there's battles that happen.
Yeah.
There are gruesome things
Yes.
that take place. I have another question for you, and I always get this, and I know this was not given to you prior. We had talked about some of these questions, but I always get one or two people that are interested in reading the book of Revelation. Now, this book, for whatever reason, when people tell me they want to read this book, I try to discourage them as much as I can to move to maybe the book of James, who has much relevancy, especially when we talk about the tongue and the language that we use and some of those things. But a lot of people are interested in this book.
Yeah.
Can you help us understand when we read this book what we're even reading?
Yeah. So I get the same question, and I always say, well, have you read the rest of it yet? Come back to me later. No, but I'm done with that because that doesn't work. They don't go read the rest of it. Revelation is a vision. The Apostle John, who wrote the Gospel of John, got this vision. I don't know how visions work. I've never had one. And he wrote down the book of Revelation. It's the story of the end time, and it's symbolic. It's hard to understand. But put yourself back in 95 AD, which is when John wrote this down, right? In one part of Revelation, he writes down that when Jesus Christ comes back, because it's the time when Jesus comes back again, when Jesus comes back, everybody on the planet will know it, right? Well, in 95 AD, no electricity, certainly no internet, no phones, no cars. No, you got to walk everywhere or ride a camel or whatever you're doing. How in the world is everybody on the planet going to know that Jesus Christ came back? Be a 95 AD person. You'll be like, I have no idea, dude. I have no idea how that's going to happen. Now be a 21st century person. How is that going to happen? I know how it's going to happen. How it could happen. I'm not saying God's going to tweet, hey, he's back, but he might. I don't know. But I can picture how it could happen now. A tweet, a Facebook post. Everybody breaks into the national airwaves and says, Jesus is back. I don't know, but to me, I can actually see how that's going to happen. So when we read the book of Revelation, we have to remember that we're really in 95 AD. So when it talks about these creatures that are covered in metal and they fly, it's in the book of Revelation. It's a helicopter, right? That's what my mind thinks. My mind thinks, well, that's just a helicopter. Well, in 95 AD, they had no idea what a helicopter was. So when we read the book of Revelation, we have to put on a 95 AD hat to listen to what he says. He'll use the word like a billion times. It was like this. It looked like this. It was kind of like, it was sort of like that, but a little like this. Trying so hard with a vocabulary he doesn't have enough of to say what he's saying. So we put that hat on, and then we can put on our 21st century hat and maybe make some, I don't know, assumptions about what this could be. A helicopter. It could be the internet, but we're still not there because Jesus still hasn't come back. So we're still guessing. So when you read the book of Revelation, have fun. Really, have fun, because nobody actually knows. And then the other part of the Revelation is that there's no history to tell us what happened. We know exactly how Jesus rose from the dead because it happened a way long time, but we have history to tell us what happened. We don't have any history to tell us what happens in Revelation. The rest of the Bible, we already know. This is the only thing that hasn't happened yet. So how in the world are we supposed to know what it's going to look like? If it's another 2,100 years from now, how much would technology have changed? And these little grasshoppers with the armor on it could actually be, grasshoppers with armor on them. So when you read Revelation, open your mind to whatever possibilities is really my best advice. But chapter 21 rocks.
Yeah, early on in my walk with Jesus, that was a big question I had. Is I automatically went to this book of Revelation,
Sure,
and
it's fascinating.
had the same kind of question. And I went to my pastor at the time, my college pastor, said, I don't know how to read this, and he basically explained it kind of how you did. Imagine stepping into you're from the 21st century, trying to explain to those people in 95 AD
Right.
what air conditioning is.
Yeah.
What it looks like to have a car with no horses. There's no such thing as that, right?
Right.
And so it was just a brilliant way to kind of link the two together. And even within that, even when you try to do that, I think you'll always be at some point stumped.
Oh, sure.
Because there are things that he has written that we still maybe have not the technological advances to understand quite yet. So that is a very fascinating point. Yeah. Well, this has been an awesome discussion. I wish we had more time to discuss all of these questions. How does the Bible all fit together? How do we read it? Where do we start from? And then even how it all intersects, as far as the book of Luke and the book of Genesis. And there's a whole lot of more questions that we could probably ask. But unfortunately, we have to go for this episode. But I thank you for watching, from wherever you are watching this episode from. If you have a question, be sure to hit us up in the comment section, and we'll try to get that answer to you. If that's a question about the Bible, if there's an interpretation you're not really sure of, hit us up in the comment, and we'll be sure to get back to you with that answer as fast as we possibly can. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week on our final episode of this collection of talks. See you later.